are so glad that you've joined us today in our study in the book of Galatians. Today we're in Galatians, the 5th chapter, and we're going back to verse number 19. This week we're going to be taking a look at the works of the flesh. You know, let me just say this. It's very important that we understand what our flesh does. That we understand that we are at war in our flesh. Now, let me just say this. Really, the warfare is in our minds because our minds control what the flesh does. But our flesh continues to work things that we don't really want in our lives. As we get to the end of this week, we're going to be talking about what happens when we allow the flesh to control us. So stay tuned. Listen. The first thing that the Apostle Paul lists here in this list, and again, we're in Galatians, the 5th chapter, verse number 19. But he says here, which are, and the first thing he lists is immorality, or if you're reading out of the New American Standard 2020 edition, it actually is a better translation. It says sexual immorality. How many of you know that there's many different types of immorality? Murder is immoral. The word immorality means something that's against the moral code. Stealing is immoral. But here, the writer of the book of Galatians, the Apostle Paul, uses a Greek word, and the Greek word is porneo. Now, maybe you're a little bit attuned to the Greek language. Maybe you saw something in that word porneo. But we get our word pornography from this word porneo. And the word actually means sexual immorality. Now, people have said, well, why did Paul mention that first? Well, maybe it was because the people in the Galatian region, those who weren't of the Jewish persuasion, were of a persuasion that worshiped gods, and one of the gods that they worshiped was the Greek god of fertility, and it was very, very, very immoral, sexually immoral. I believe that's the reason why the Apostle Paul starts this list with that, because this is a predominant work that the flesh is doing in the lives of believers even. He's telling them this is what we need to get rid of. This is what we need to do away with. And he's saying, I want you to recognize that sexual immorality, it doesn't come from God. It comes from the flesh. It's generated, it's performed by the flesh. Now, what is sexual immorality? Well, we could say it's any type of sexual activity outside of marriage. In this word, the porneo, we would find homosexuality. We would find adultery. We would find prostitution. We would find pornography. Any type of sexual immorality is included in this work of the flesh. Sexual immorality. Do you understand that? You see, we need to understand that sexual immorality is a work of the flesh, and it's not a gift that's given to us by God. Now, the next word. And Paul stays on this theme of sexual things, sexual sin. The next word he uses is impurity. And it basically means something that's unclean. But this would really pertain to several different areas of a person's life. It would pertain to speech. How many of you know that there's a lot of unclean speech? Now, I'm talking about sexually immoral speech here, keeping this in context. You know, it doesn't take long to watch a television program, and you know what? You're going to find this word impurity. You're going to find speech that is impure, speech that's immoral. Another way that we could apply this Greek word is to the dress of a person. You know, go to the beach and you'll see a beautiful example, not only with the women but also with the men, of things that are impure. Not everybody there, but there's so much of it. And so this word impure means, it can pertain to the dress of a person, to the way that they dress. It really is any type of moral uncleanness. Do you understand? It could be a gesture. It could be so many different things. But the Apostle Paul is telling us this is something that's generated out of the flesh. This is what the flesh wants to do. Do you understand? Now we're going to end this week by talking about what happens when we partake of this, and I don't want to get ahead of myself. The next word that he uses is sensuality. Sensual. Now what does that mean? It means that the absence of restraint, or a tremendous, very strong, out of control desire for pleasure. This could be in any area of a person's life. Let me just say this. There was a cult group that was very much in practice in Galatia called the Epicureans. The Epicureans believed that pleasure was God, basically. They believed that we need just pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. In fact, one of the things that they would do is they would eat so much and then they would vomit, cause themselves to vomit, and then they would eat some more. Why? Because they thought that pleasure was God. That pleasure was something that needed to be fulfilled. And so when we look at this word sensuality, what we see is a lifestyle that's just completely centered around pleasure. Let me just say this as we close this video. Those three sins, those three works of the flesh, they will never bring you to a place of fulfillment. Do you understand that? Thank you for watching today. Join us again tomorrow as we continue this study of the works of the flesh.